2, 3.
When you start to question the whole thing, it unwinds. Behold the great deception. Traversing throughout time. Do you dare to question if there's a grip upon your mind? Cause at the mere suggestion it leaves you all entwined. I've been searching round for curvature, but there ain't none to see. No matter where I let my head turn, seems awfully flat to me. Will you start to question the shackles of your mind? If you let it open, you know there's truth inside. Have you been numbed into complacence, bred in circus to the end? It's time to claim your mental freedom. You know it's up to you, my friend. I've been searching round for curvature, but there ain't none to see. No matter where I let my head turn, seems awfully flat to me. The shackles of your mind. If you let it open, you know there's truth inside. Will you start to question
is a mirage. You typically would not be able to see this from the Lake Michigan shore. We talked about this last night. Conditions are right on the lake that we're actually seeing a mirage of the Chicago skyline.
Here's a mirage. How's my audio, everybody? Can you hear me fine? Five by five on the audio. So, can you all hear me? Get this show on the road? Just waiting for a little response there on the chat. Ah, good. Okay, fine. All right. So, there we go. All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Celium 7 channel. A whole lot of new subscribers have come to the channel in the last few days after an interview that I did with Jason Brashears on the Archaics channel. So welcome all the errants to the channel. Fun to have a whole new influx of people and just incredibly positive comments, both in the video on Jason's channel and the comment threads, but also a lot of you have been churning through some of the videos here and have had really awesome things to say. So for those of you who have just kind of checked in for the first time and had a look around and are looking at the videos and wondering what the heck is this channel all about, there's really three primary thrusts to the channel. The first has to do with what you can see here on the screen, and not necessarily in this order, but for the last 6 months especially, I've been really doing a lot of looking into the evidence that's out there for the existence of these great avatar-sized trees, you know, trees that were miles wide at the stump and covered the heavens with their branches and the wildlife that dwelled within. So I've done a number of videos on this subject, really showcasing the work of another channel called Hangman 1128. Mike is he's also a Mike over there. A lot of mics in the truthing game, it seems. And he's been producing videos on this subject for years and has hundreds of hours of amazing footage. Some of it you just saw there in the opening with the song. Picked out some of my favorite shots from his work, and we're going to see a little bit more of his stuff today. And the thumbnail that you're seeing on the screen is a live stream that I did, I don't know, a couple months ago that was very well received on the subject of the great trees. And been covering lots of different aspects of that research. This is from my last live stream, which was called Spelunking Titanic Trees, and it was looking at the idea that you can see in this picture here that, oh, there we go, got my mouse on the wrong screen, that there are trees around the world that have these inexplicable waterfalls coming out from within. So obviously there are channels in the tree that are large enough to support the movements of this kind of water, or this quantity of water. And so I was just hypothesizing, well, what would that look like if it was a tree that was miles wide at the base? And there's a channel called the Action Adventure Twins that I showed a fair amount of footage in this last live stream that I did called Spelunking Titanic Trees. If I'm a little less eloquent than usual, it's because I went out to lunch with my friend Alex yesterday, and we started off with a picture of something called Agua Valencia, which I thought was beer mixed with lemonade, which is actually, I think that's called a clara, is what that's known as. But the Agua Valencia turns out to have vodka and gin in it, and so we polished off a picture of those between us. And I'm not much of a drinker, so and then we finished off with cognac. So if I'm not my usual sharp self, that's why. I'm just looking for excuses already. Anyway, so spelunking Titanic trees. The video that I did just before that, also a live stream, was on the subject of opals and how opals actually come from tree, and looking at just more of the evidence and some of the scientific evidence that suggests that a lot of our gemstones, things like opals, agates, potentially geodes, lots of different things that we think of as geology started as biology and then in one way or another petrified. So that's another one of the big themes on this channel, is this idea of instant petrification. A lot of people are familiar with the concept of mud fossils and the idea that what we call petrification or petrifaction or paramineralization is actually not as they told us in the mainstream geological narrative, where it takes millions and millions of years, but it's actually something that can come on in a relatively brief amount of time, whether it can be instantaneous in a matter of seconds or over months or years. It's not necessarily like the mainstream geological narrative tells us, where it's hundreds of millions of years and it's wildlife and plant life dying and compressing and leading to sedimentary layering and then eventually metamorphic rock and then melting down back to igneous rock and start, continuing what they call the cycle of petrogenesis, petro being rock and genesis being origin, right? So I no longer believe the mainstream narrative. There's certain aspects of it that are true, and some of them you can witness. For example, with igneous rock and volcanic activity, you can actually see the lava coming up out of the volcano and pouring down the sides, and then you can witness it cool, and so some of that is true. But I think a lot of what we're fed when it comes to the geological narrative, my conclusion is that a lot of it is inaccurate and erroneous, and sometimes probably intentionally so. But don't take my word for it, because I'm not a geologist, I'm not a physicist, I'm not any of those things. I'm just a guy who started looking at this stuff with new eyes about 5 years ago and was really surprised by a lot of the things that I found. Another live stream I did not so long ago was called Biogeology, Geopolymers, and Lies, and this one I'm looking a lot into this whole idea of sandstone layering and what it is. There's different theories about it. Some are suggesting that these are actually geopolymer, that there were some kind of giant machines that were laying down these layers in order to basically terraform the realm and then make use of that layering. I no longer believe that to be true. There was a time where I thought it was a plausible idea. I think it's far more likely that the sandstone is tree, and I present lots of different examples in this video, looking at the sandstone dwellings, looking at all the different ways in which sandstone manifests. And again, I'm just going to tip my hat to Hangman 1128, because a lot of that information I got straight from him. And these pictures that you see here in the middle, this is showing what petrified wood looks like when you pull a little piece of the oxidized portion out away from it. And that is, you can see the grain remaining underneath. This is like the knot of a tree, but much, much larger. And inside the knot is where you're going to find the sap. So touched a lot on the whole concept of sap and what is sap and can sap petrify to quartz in my last live stream, Spelunking Titanic Trees. Some really interesting stuff that I'm not going to repeat there. Yeah, so synchronicities has been a huge part of my journey when it comes to all of this stuff, and it ties into my work, which I'll talk about in a moment, on on the mountain Montgo here in Spain, which I've done a lot of boots on the ground investigation, looking at the mountain in a whole variety of ways. This particular stream I did, I'm very fond of because it touches on some of the best stories I have to tell about some of the different synchronicities that have come up in the course of you know, the journey of this channel. So we've got the mountain, we have the whole concept of the petrified trees, and then the third subject that I've touched on a whole lot is what I have taken to calling petrified organs, more specifically petrified hearts, and looking at the evidence for this idea that soft tissue can also petrify and can remain in the form of stones, but that we are all paradigm blind, and we've all been raised with a certain set of assumptions about geology and and how rocks come about based on what we've been told by our school books and professors who either wrote or believed those school books. And so I've accumulated what many would consider to be a vast amount of evidence in favor of this idea that even soft tissue can petrify, because we're taught that our skeletons, you know, they're hard, so they're going to be found after a petrification process takes place, and that's what they're unearthing when they're doing archaeological digs, and they're finding the bones of mammoths and the bones of sometimes giants if they don't get squirreled away by the Smithsonian. And so, you know, that's true also, but the myriad of different things that can petrify, the ways in which they can petrify, all of this is what I've been touching on a great deal on this channel, and looking at what is the evidence for these things, what are some of the possible ways in which this could have come about, and exploring theories that, you know, relate to that. So the petrified organs is a big part of this this work. I'm a chiropractor by trade. I studied a lot of anatomy and physiology and histology, which is a study of tissues, and microscopy, and doing all kinds of different things in school, a lot of which I haven't used since then. But when I started getting curious about the stones and getting curious about just this whole idea that a lot of the geology that we see might be biology, but biology that not in the hundreds of millions of years sense of being compressed into layers and then breaking off into pieces, but actually more recent. And this gets into a lot of the stuff related to mythology and you know, the myths of the great you know, the legends, the myths, and the religious texts as well. So here you see Medusa, and she's, you know, from the Greek mythology, the whole idea of instant petrification. She just looks at you and you turn to stone, right? And there's lots of different stories in the history books that have to do with petrification. So when I started to go out and look at rocks differently, one of the first things that I encountered was this rock up here, and I've made a video about that called Mud Fossils, the Heart of the Matter. That one stone has over 20 different anatomical correlations that match up with heart anatomy. I've gone in with an endoscopic camera. I've looked at the inside, the outside, the valve structure, the chambers, you name it, and I've got all of the information side by side so you can see the anatomy for yourself. I'm not just naming off a bunch of complex Latin terms and expecting you to believe me. I'm showing you what I'm seeing and what I found when I went and compared it to the books. And then after I did that, I went out looking for more, because I figured if there was any truth to this as a possible phenomenon, then it should also be repeatable. That's part of the scientific method, is you recognize something in nature, perhaps a pattern, and you see, is this pattern repeatable? Is it specific? Is it scalable? Can I go out and can I find more that matches this? Because if not, it's just a one-off thing where you found this, you know, really amazing stone, and maybe it's just a bunch of pareidolia, or apophenia. Pareidolia is seeing something, a pattern that's not really there, and apophenia is recognizing what you think is a reoccurring pattern, but it's also not that. So yeah, petrified organs. There's a lot of evidence in the older texts to suggest that this was a thing that was discussed, but we're taught specifically that it can't happen because petrified hearts are soft tissue that are eaten by the larvae, the worms, the bacteria, long before they could ever possibly petrify. So this is a clipping from my good friend Ben. He's got a channel called The Archivist, Waking Up with Analog, new channel that's just exploding, and he's done some amazing interviews recently, a couple of great interviews on the Higher Side chats, and I've gotten a whole lot of great stuff from him from the late 1800s right up until like the beginning of 1910s, 1920s, that have to do with all kinds of things about petrification, petrifaction, petrified trees, all sorts of stuff that I never knew about. So I'll just read this brief article. And also, I got a comment from somebody, which was a valid comment on the channel, criticizing that a lot of these clippings have no references. There's no, and in this day of AI, this kind of thing could easily be faked, right? But a huge amount of the clippings that Ben has on his Twitter feed and now on his channel do have references, do have dates, and the names of the publications. So really what he's amassing is a preponderance of evidence for a completely different historical narrative when it comes to the ancient world, and what we've been taught about it versus what they were talking about as little as 100 years ago. And those clippings taken as a whole are just undeniable, in my opinion. But he's going state by state. He's got a series called Anomalous America, and he's pulling up these crazy articles talking about ruins that are 3 layers deep, and every layer deeper that they go, they're more impressive and larger, and petrified creatures that are hundreds of feet long, trees that are well, you'll see them here in a second. But the point being that yeah, it's a valid criticism that some of these don't have references, but taken as a whole, there's so much that is easily corroborated and lines up and dovetails perfectly with what Ben has been showing over and over again on his channel. So, and he's got such a comprehensive knowledge of history and our realm, and he and I have been friends and talking now for going on 4+ years. And I've learned so much from him. And I had no idea when I embarked on this journey with the Heartstones and with the mountain that there was all of this evidence in support of this stuff. I had no idea. I was just looking at what was there in front of me, trying to make sense of it, and understanding that maybe things aren't exactly the way we were taught. And yeah, so that is he's been a real help in my journey. So Ernest Hawkins, while engaged in hunting for Indian arrowheads and other curios near Ridgefield State in Washington, picked up an object which is said to be a petrified heart of an infant. It's probably that of some Indian child, as years ago when the Indians roamed that part of the country, it's said by the old-timers that they had a burying ground near where the petrified heart was found. The petrified heart is in good shape, and the arteries and blood vessels can be plainly outlined. Here's another. Petrified heart, finds petrified heart, Batesville, October 25th. A mining man living in Batesville recently discovered a curiosity on his mining property while sinking a shaft for the location of manganese, where he dug up a petrified heart about the average size of the human heart. The heart was perfect in shape and has the appearance of coagulated blood on one side, while on the other it shows a clear red surface, and near the top there appears 2 gashes indicative of wounds. Owing to the depths at which the curio was found, it's thought that it may be the heart of an Indian who perhaps was murdered in this section of the Ozarks years ago when the Indian tribes occupied this country. So I've done a number of videos on these heartstones showing the reoccurring anatomy, how specific it is. There's a great number of specificities that shouldn't be there if these were just random rocks. This particular video, I sliced them open, I polished them. In another video, I went out live into the river bottom, found a number of these stones that matched exactly what I'd been showing already, broke them open live, and especially towards the end of that video, I saved the best for last, There's some that have chambers inside and they look bloody when I crack them open. I've got a whole playlist of just shorter tidbits for people who are short on time and want to see some of that information. This one is called Boiled Egg Theory. That's one of my ideas about how the petrified organs came about, being found separate from the body without the skeletons through some kind of a cataclysmic heating, plasma or electrical event, that the rest of the body is being destroyed while the organs themselves are being preserved inside of fatty sacs, which is what all of the organs are wrapped in, which the heart's sac is the thickest of them. That's called the pericardium. So there's a whole lot of different biological tidbits if you want to check out those. This was a 3-hour video that I made after having sent off a bunch of rocks to a laboratory in, I always forget if it's New Mexico or Arizona, to a supposedly reputable laboratory where they promised to do a full analysis of these stones. And that is the telling of that tale, which is very, very interesting if you'd like to see how somebody with alternative ideas to the mainstream when it comes to geology is treated. So another theme is the heart stones and how that ties into the works of Francisco Torrent Guasp. If you saw the preview video that lasted for a minute at the very beginning before the live stream, that tells the story of this Spanish cardiologist who discovered the true nature of the anatomy of the heart. What we were taught in schools is completely inaccurate. He proved this undoubtedly. That later led to discoveries about the nature of the flow, the toroidal flow of blood through the heart, which ties into the works of Victor Schauberger and magnetics and liquid flow in general, and it's a very, very fascinating story. There's a lot of synchronicity tied into that as well, because after I found the heart stones, then I discovered the cardiologist. I didn't know anything about the helical heart and his discoveries, and it turns out that cardiologist lived and worked his entire life about 10 minutes from where I am. And so he passed away about 15 years ago. I guess it's probably 17 by now. And I didn't have a chance to meet him before he passed away, but I did get to meet his son, and that's what this video is about as well. That was an interesting encounter, and I tell it in detail. Yeah, so that's just kind of a little summary of the channel. Oh, and then I've done a 6-part series, 7 parts if you count the live stream on this mountain here in Spain called Montgo, and all of the different wacky ways in which its structure seems to line up with the anatomy of a vertebrate, and it very much resembles that of an elephant. And it's known affectionately as the elephant by many of the locals here in Spain. The first part is actually, you don't even need to watch the first part. It's just kind of an overview of the whole subject of instant petrification. You could skip straight to part 2. A lot of people watch part 1 and then they don't continue. But it's really parts 2 through 6 that are the telling of the evidence, and part 3 is about the ear. Part 5 is more discoveries regarding the eye, the eyeball, the crystalline structure that is in place exactly where it should be, that reflects the anatomy of an eyeball in a variety of different ways. I cover a lot of information about the structure of the mountain itself and how that lines up with histology, which is the study of tissues, and how Titan bone, would that look like our bone? And if it did, what would I expect to find, and that sort of thing. So it's pretty extensive research. It takes a while to go through. I wish I had shorter videos. Well, I've got a couple of short videos called Petrified Titans and Organs Part 1 and 2 for people who are short on time. But as far as encapsulating that 7-part series, the 7th part is really a live stream from me up at the eye of Montgo, and just going through it with people live and taking questions and showing that this doesn't just look like an eye socket, but there's about 15 to 20 different things that line up exactly with an eye socket. So that is the thrust of this channel, and I just wanted to kind of go through that because there's been almost 1,000 new subscribers in the last week. And if you're not familiar with this this channel, I just wanted to give an overview because a lot of people only take the latest thing and then run with that. And there's a whole lot of research that I've done and information that I presented that I'm not just going to keep going over and over again and repeating the same information. But I do need to encapsulate it into much shorter format. But it's so hard because I'm a perfectionist, and the editing process is so lengthy. And you know, to just get it to have a nice flow and to match with the music and all that stuff, to do that 6-part series of Montgo in an hour, which I could do, but I'd need a month to do it, and I've got so many other things on my to-do list that are more important. So if you want to see that information and it's moving too slow, speed it up to 1.5, 1.75, 2x or whatever, or just take in the visuals. So that's just kind of the preamble to tonight's presentation. Everything good still? Can let me know with the audio, and I'll pop this back out and we can move along. Oh, thank you for the donation, Susan. Much appreciated. Every little bit helps. All right, so let's see. There's Monty, the Titanic elephant. So in the last live stream I did, I touched a lot on this concept of sap becoming quartz, and there's a lot of people who are finding fault with the evidence that I've been presenting and that Hangman has been presenting, showing that there's far more to the whole great tree narrative than what a lot of people are believing when they see these, you know, the tree stumps, Devil's Tower, the plateaus, this whole no forests on flat Earth narrative. That's one aspect of the whole subject. But a lot of people find fault with that, and they say, no, basalt doesn't resemble tree whatsoever. The molecular structure is completely different, which I would expect it to be, right? If something has petrified and is stone that used to be wood or sap, it's not going to have the same molecular structure that it had when it was alive or when it was decomposing. So this whole thing of one thing not being the same as another, I'm operating under the assumption that there's a transmutation of elements that's coming about as a result of some high power force, whether it's volcanic, something like a pyroclastic flow where the temperatures can reach 1500 degrees Celsius. You know, add velocity to that, you're going to get even greater temperatures. Plasma is known to petrify things like that. In the last video, I think I'll just show it and touch on it again, but I showed an experiment that a guy did with his microwave mixing 2 powders together, and the plasma from the magnetron in a microwave is capable of converting these powders into ruby in 10 seconds, and pretty substantial size rubies, like, you know, millimeters wide. And that's going from a powder to a crystalline matrix that's the second hardest after diamond on the Mohs scale. So for me, the idea of instant petrification, there's lots and lots of examples about it that I've talked about in my live streams. Montgo Jup from Thunderbolts Project has a great video on instant petrification. He tells the story of a high tension electrical wire that fell and landed across multiple tree stumps that were, you know, basically because it hit these tree stumps, the wire didn't ground out and the current was running through these tree stumps for something like 6 hours. And all of the tree stumps turned to stone. And then when they excavated these tree stumps later, it turned out that the entire root structures had also turned to stone. So there's lots of examples. I've many times mentioned Girolamo Sagato and Paolo Gorini, who are Italian scientists from about a century ago, whose works can be found online. You can search for either one of them, Girolamo Sagato. Paolo Gorini. They knew how to petrify flesh of all different kinds, and their gruesome stuff is still in the museums to this day. So, you know, to get hung up on one little aspect of sap is not quartz. Sap is amorphous. It's not crystalline like quartz. That's true. But what would happen to sap after being hit by high power plasma? Perhaps it becomes crystalline. Perhaps, I mean, sap already hardens to the point where it becomes very crystalline just in open air through normal oxidization. So, yeah, I don't have such a problem with the whole idea. Some who criticize the great trees and the idea of titans have a problem with this. I mentioned this also in the Spelunking Trees live stream, the square cube law, that as something gets bigger and bigger and bigger, its mass is so great that it could no longer support its own weight. But that's all entirely based on the theory of gravity. And you know, what we know about electrostatics is that they're orders of magnitude more powerful than the theory of than gravity, right? So you take a balloon and you rub it against your head and it'll stick to things. That's electrostatics, and it's easily, you know, demonstrable in a laboratory experiment. You can change the direction of gravity using electricity and cause things to go up or down just based on the polarity. So this whole idea that things got too big for their britches and would have collapsed under their own weight, I don't buy it for a second. I think that that the trees could have easily been that big, but not based on Einsteinian or Newtonian gravity, neither which, as I understand it, has any basis in fact. So, yeah, but I'm not an expert. Don't trust me on that. So that in this live stream, I go deep into this whole topic of sap and talk about all the different ways it manifests and these different kinds and colors. So this would explain very nicely the myriad of different kinds of rocks and geodes that we have in our environment. And isn't it interesting that gold may hint at buried treasure? So trees are obviously bioaccumulators. They're pulling minerals out of the soil, and as they're bringing up the water through their tree roots, some of those minerals and trace elements are going to get come along for the ride, and then they work their ways up through the tree, and they can actually be found in the leaves. So this is what this article is about, and I'll link all of these after the presentation. I'll edit the show notes and I'll put all of the stuff that has a link for it. I'll put in the show notes if you want to find this later. But one of the things that they'll do when they're prospecting is they'll go and they'll find trees that have high contents of gold in their leaves, and that gives them a clue that the tree itself might be over a gold deposit. Money may not grow on trees, but gold does, or at least it accumulates inside of them. Scientists have found that trees growing over deeply buried deposits of gold ore sport leaves with higher than normal concentrations of the glittering element. The findings provide an inexpensive excavation-free way to narrow the search for ore deposits. So their assumption is that the gold is just there in the rocks, and that the trees are grabbing it and leaching it out, and that's how it ends up in the trees. But what they're not really considering, and there's no hint of it anywhere in this article, is the possibility that those trees that we think are big by today's standards might just be living on the decomposing backs of the Titanic trees, which had all of these elements within them. And so just like moss and different kinds of fungi, what is it, the hard G, fungi, and they're all bioaccumulators as well. They're going to be concentrating these elements, as will creatures, right? So it's said that the body, the human heart, contains gold, and that gold can be found in different parts of the body in trace amounts. But if you're talking about something the size of a titan, a being that was a mile tall, and that's gonna lead to some interesting accumulations of those elements, I would think. So yeah, just an interesting article touching on this way that they're they're going about looking for gold nowadays. And if you think about root structures of trees, I touched on this in the last couple of streams. You've got a lot of parallel lines going this way, and then you've got the roots that are going straight down. So, and then you have also connecting points. So in the Action Adventure Twins videos, which I covered in Spelunking Titanic Trees, I think they're going down these bigger channels, but not hollowed out tree stumps, but actually the water channels within those greater tree stumps that would have been miles wide. And then they go down for a while, and then all of a sudden they'll find like a winding passage that has all of this layering, which we're told is sedimentary layering, but that passage winds and then it connects to another big channel that goes straight down. And so I'll show a couple pictures of that later on. And then inevitably there's waterfalls and all kinds of little rivers traveling through these things, just like I was talking about before with the smaller version of these trees doing the exact same thing. And this is what it looks like when they get inside. And so a lot of times, I think the mainstream narratives for this stuff is talking about water erosion over hundreds of millions of years. I once, or multiple times, went to the Crystal Caves in Sequoia National Park, which are said to be directly above where there once was a gigantic tree. This is something that Ben has talked about in his videos. And when you go into these caves, it's just, they're the most phenomenal things you've ever seen, and they're just winding and they're talking. I remember the tours. They're talking about hundreds of millions of years, and water has carved out these channels. But now the rivers are smaller inside, and you don't see them carving out narrow channels. Like the water's just moving through there like it always has. But a lot of this stuff isn't even smooth, so it hasn't been carved out by water because the water would have smoothed it over time. So I think that they're inside of channels that are inside of Titanic trees, and this is this is what I went into in a lot of detail in the last stream. So a gigantic petrified tree, one of the most astonishing trees which the annals of the world furnish any account, is found lying on the ground near Honey Lake on a slope of the Sierra Nevada mountains in California. It's a petrified cedar. Cedar is what Hangman has really been presenting a great deal of evidence on, the great cedars. And that's what the Assyrian was, this great tree that was in Lebanon that is spoken of in the Bible. That was a cedar. Having a diameter of 40 feet at the butt, and that's 4 feet wider than the largest tree in the world right now, which is General Sherman in the Sequoia National Forest. It takes 26 men fingertip to fingertip to circle that thing. I don't know, it's probably grown in the last years. Maybe it's 27 men now. Yeah, 40 feet at the butt, or a circumference of 130 feet, and is 660 feet in length to the point where its diameter is 4 feet. The remaining portion of this monster tree is covered with sand and has therefore never been measured in its entire length, but if it maintains its symmetrical proportions to the top, as it probably does, 40 or 50 feet of it must be hidden in the earth, thus making its entire length more than 700 feet. And that is petrified. And Hyperion tree length, this is the tallest tree in the world, Hyperion, and it is only 377 feet now. So this is literally a petrified tree that is twice the height of the current tallest tree in the world. So megaflora and megafauna isn't any, novelty. That's something even the mainstream geological narrative is talking about regularly. But it's just interesting. We're going to get into a couple other things here with the petrified trees, but here's a petrified tree 600 feet in length and 2 feet thick. That's bizarre. 2 feet thick, 600 feet in length. To me, that suggests that it was more likely a branch than a tree, probably just a twig on something much, much larger. But the tree is lying on the surface of the ground and is petrified through and through. Geologists pronounce it as one of the greatest natural curiosities he's ever seen. Yeah. So these are more clips from Ben. This was a big mind opener for me, because this ties into my whole thoughts about transmutation of elements, that we're taught that that's not possible in the mainstream narrative unless you have a nuclear furnace of a sun, or nuclear power that can start to heat things to such a temperature that they fuse together and create new elements, right? But we know that this isn't true just by looking at biological transmutation. I've given the example many times of a chicken creating eggs every single day, and the calcium that's in the egg shell is greater than the amount of calcium that the chicken is consuming in the course of a day in its diet. So it's obviously transmuting elements to create the calcium for the shell, to say nothing of the calcium it needs for its own body and bones. So there's lots of examples of this. There's a book by, I think his name is Louis Kervran, Kervran, Chervran or something. I'm not sure how his name is pronounced, but that's on the subject of biological transmutation. So biological transmutation and just transmutation of elements through high forces is just, in my mind, is a fact. It's not a theory. So here, they're taking trees. Let's see, from a silver mine in southern Utah, petrified wood is being taken in which chloride of silver is contained, worth nearly 1,000 to the ton. So they're finding silver in these petrified trees. The formation is sandstone, out of which horn silver is taken. Sandstone is what the cedar breaks down to. So petrified cedar eventually breaks down, or becomes sandstone, becomes very soft, and then literally breaks down to sand. We take that sand, we heat it up again, we melt it, we vitrify it, and we make glass. We make all kinds of different things out of sand. It's all petrified tree. And the trees are not just accumulating silver, but I think what's happening is that there's a transmutation of elements that's happening. So whether it's a volcanic plasma storm and they're getting hit by lightning and huge amounts of plasma are going through the tree trunks and causing these elements to transmute, or whether it was some fantastical world where the trees literally were growing and making gold and silver. For me, either one is amazing, but I think of Avatar and the way they present the information to us in fiction in Hollywood, and that bioluminescent world where everything glows it's giving off its own light, just like we have creatures in the sea that are bioluminescent. You can there's all kinds of great videos looking at these different creatures below the water that are giving off light, and different kinds of bacteria, and people surfing in waves where they have this bacteria, and as you jostle the bacteria, it glows like it's like something out of a fiction movie, but it's right here in our amazing world. So bioluminescence is definitely a thing. And we talked a fair amount in my conversation with Jason and Archaics about this idea of the vapor canopy world, the antediluvian world, and what things looked like when the giant trees were here and the megafauna was here, the giant creatures, and that's something that Ben has also been touching a lot on his channel. So this is just more, this is what the petrified forests that they took away looked like. They were huge, and there were tons and tons of these stumps that were filled with silver and copper and gold, and they were harvesting this in order to make use of these elements. Here they're talking about petrified logs on his farm that were from 3 to 5 feet in diameter and were assaying $15,000 of silver to the ton, and this is 100 years ago. So that I don't know what that would be nowadays, 15 million or more to the ton. That's a lot of silver. I'm not going to read this one, but you can pause it if you want to read that. I've gone over it before in this stream, or go back and watch this stream. I start talking about geodes as well, and theories that I have, and Ben as well, where looking at all of the different kinds of life that manifests here in our realm, and fruit, different, you name it. What if it could all turn to stone, and what would it then look like if you took a cross section of it? Probably would look pretty fantastic, a lot like our geodes and our agates and all of these different materials that we see today. All right, so this is and this here at about 43 minutes is the video that I was talking about, where this guy is taking chromium oxide and sandblasting tumbling lapidary, and I can't read the whole name, but it's something aluminum oxide and chromium oxide. He mixes them together, puts them inside of a candle votive container with a ceramic top so the plasma can work its way in and out through the space between them. And in 10 seconds, he turns these two powders into rubies. So there's your instant petrification, and it's just fact. He shows that they're really rubies using the black light, and harvests those. And then I talked about opals as well, and how opals, in my opinion, are 100% being harvested from inside the root structures of the great trees. And exactly what are the conditions that lead to opalization? Well, guess what? They can make artificial opals, and talked about that as well. So they know how these things come about, and they're able to reproduce them in laboratories. And there's a lot of great info in this video, looking at petrification, looking at sap, and whatnot. So if you haven't seen that one, I highly recommend it. And going back to Hangman, we'll just listen to a little bit of him talking about sap for a moment. And I'll check in with the chat and see how you guys are doing.
And then you have white. This thing will happen naturally with sap, with maple or honey or sugar. And then on a larger scale, these crystals will become larger. But this is a natural occurring thing. This is sap right here. And I'm going to show you some more to hammer it home, so to speak. This is just discolored because it was open. It wasn't a sealed unit, so to speak, and it became weathered. All this is right here, I know this don't look like tree, but I'll show you in a minute. This is sap. There was a pocket of sap that crystallized, and it did this. Okay. This is the.
In one of the last two videos, I showed a little reel that I found of a guy pulling a baseball bat, or a baseball-sized little clump of sap off of a tree, and the outside had started to harden, and as he pulls it off, it squishes because it wasn't petrified, and you can see that it's identical to the things that he's showing here. And so if there's a space in the middle, then that material is gonna, the crystals are gonna grow over time inside.
A natural forming thing from different plants, trees, shrubs, bushes of vegetation. Okay, and I'm going to show you that here in a minute.
So that's just
but
one
I want
of those
you to look
clumps
at this again
of
before
sap.
we leave from here. This here was no different than this. It was just a big ball of sap that it crystallized and.
He shows all of the fresh sap in this video. He shows the petrified sap. He breaks it down into smaller and smaller pieces, and they're identical in every way. And the fresh sap, when you pull it off the tree, some of the bark comes with it, and some of the the different kinds of bark and the different layers of bark. Well, when that petrifies, it petrifies to mica. And so this is a really great video where he's going around his whole yard and all of the samples that he's got, showing all of these different ways in which this stuff manifests. And the critics will say it's point and claim, and what I say is it's point and see. And as Mike often says, he can show you, but he can't understand it for you. And you can deny it, and you can wait for some kind of an experiment where they prove unequivocally that sap does petrify to quartz, or you can just see it for what it is. And if you go back to those opening 6 minutes of this video, I think it's pretty self-evident that's the case. And on the subject of sap, I neglected in my last video to give a shout out to this channel. Spells of Truth. This guy reached out to me. It was a wonderful synchronicity because I was kind of going back and forth with somebody over this subject of sap versus quartz, and out of the blue, he sent me some information on the subject of something known as electrodes, which are these electromagnetic things that are used in speakers, for example. And he was talking a lot about the piezoelectric effect. He was talking about electrodes in this unified theory of the realm. I don't agree with everything that he says, but he seems like a pretty nice, honest guy, and you know, he's definitely worth subbing to if you're interested in these subjects, because he's really looking at a lot of the stuff from a very empirical, scientific way. So, Spells of Truth, give him a sub if you'd like to help out his channel and help it grow. So this is one of the more recent videos from Hangman just 4 weeks ago. He had a lot of stuff happen in his life. His house burned down, and he had all kinds of troubles with the rebuilding and contractors and insurance, and so he's kind of been gone for the last year or so. So I've been very happy to kind of take up the baton and talk about a lot of this stuff while he's been missing in action. But he has put out a few videos over the last 6 months, and they're really great. So we can actually watch a little bit of this one, because this is a new site that I hadn't seen before, and it is just another slam dunk as far as what I consider to be 100% empirical evidence that the great trees were real.
And I want to just show you real quick. So this is what the tree does, okay? All these gaps and ledges and edges, and then it breaks down in all these little pieces like this. And you see the rings in them, okay? So let's go right up here. So I've told you that quartz is the petrified sap. So them little pieces that I just showed you, these are just a couple, for example. They are everywhere for a 100-mile radius. These are them little pieces, okay? You come right up here, I'm going to show you. This is just another one of them, another incredible finds where you can see the color of the wood. First, I want to show you that is the sap in these biblical trees that petrified. Look at this. This is stone, but this is so preserved. It doesn't even look petrified. It looks fresh. So each one of these is not a ring. The tree's like fibers. This whole thing could have been part of one ring that was feet upon feet thick. But look at this. It's incredible. And that's the sap that petrified. It's what they call quartz in today's world. So gold and quartz, they always run together unless they've been separated through hard rock mining or pieces falling down, breaking, getting into the river, into the ground. But the gold originated in the trees. It was liquid inside the trees, just like most of all the other metals and minerals on the periodic table. It came from the biblical trees, plants, shrubs, bushes, and vegetation. It's kind of like, you know, they put truth in plain sight all the time. Like you look at Avatar, how they plug into the trees. They were alive. Not saying that's what man did, but the trees were special. There's energy all around us. It's a common denominator, people.
Yeah, I mean, if you can't see, that's wood.
This is truly incredible.
I showed this to somebody, and what I
little
got
pieces and
was,
parts.
I see rocks.
See? If you crush up sap from a cedar tree today, you'll see it's the same as this, petrified. It's identical. This is the sap. Let's see what's on the other side.
It's just a tiny chunk of something that was miles wide
Pretty
and
incredible.
stretched into the heavens.
But yeah, these are all just them little pieces I just showed you. And all these little pieces everywhere. You see the characteristics of the cedar. It always got the, like here, the twists and turns. Just the way the cedar does. How it twists and turns up. This here was curving.
Can hardly tell the
And
difference
this
between
whole piece right here
the wood and the
would be
stone.
like a grain of sand in the entire ocean. That's how insignificant and small this is from the tree that it came from.
Yeah, it's just amazing. Someday I hope to be able to maybe visit him and see some of this stuff with my own eyes, because it's so phenomenal. We'll come back to this one in a moment. So this is the thing, and the title of today's video is the great trees. What was I can't even remember the title, but did the great trees give us our gold? And so, like he said, like Mike said, the gold, the highest quality gold, and the gold nuggets and the gold veins, those are found in quartz. You can find gold in other places, but you know, it's like he said, it's going to be runoff from rivers and whatnot, and then that's going to be compressed perhaps in mud, and you can go panning for gold. So not all gold is found in quartz, but that's where the largest quantities and the highest quality is. And you know, this is inside. He's got the pickaxe, and he's looking at the quartz vein, and so you can see that the gold and quartz go hand in hand, just like in the thumbnail. So let's just take a look at some of these photographs. It's just amazing. So this is what a gold vein looks like. And in mining, I haven't had a chance to go through it, but Ben sent me a document on mining terminology. And you know, when they're talking about a lot of this stuff, they're using anatomical terms. You know, a vein is a common one when they're referring to waters coming up through geological structures. They talk about artesian wells, art being the word for artery. Articulation is another word that has art in it. That's joint in our bodies. So they're using anatomical terms in geology, which is pretty fascinating. So just look at some of the. I mean, it's so beautiful. So I had no idea how complex it was to extract the gold from the quartz and from all of these different areas. We're going to look at some videos where they're touching on that. So this is a quartz vein, and this is what they're looking for when they go looking for gold, and they'll dig deep down in looking for these quartz veins. And you know, it almost looks like a tooth with a gold crown that went wrong. But once again, your quartz, and it can be like speckled throughout, or it can be like a line. This is those trees that I was talking about earlier. And this is, it's not the highest quality image, but better like that. Yeah, so quartz veins, that's where they're finding it. And you know, there are massive nuggets that they find occasionally, and if you know this is from some kind of a Titan or a Titanic tree, it makes sense. So who knows if the trees were once here, which I believe fully they were, then you know, they're not here now. So what happened to all that material? Was it used to create the realm, to create all these different layers of structures that many researchers have been finding all over? It seems the deeper down you go, the more megalithic all of the architecture becomes, And a lot of that architecture is made from geopolymers, as we know now. So geopolymers are just man-made stone. And how do they make it? Well, they had all kinds of different recipes depending on what kind of stone you want. Just like the Romans had Roman concrete, and you have Portland cement or concrete. You've got all these different, known recipes. Well, they could make any of it. They could make granite, they could make marble. And how did they do that? Well, they took the native stone, they crushed it down, and then mixed it together in the right percentages, and they were able to create whatever they wanted to create. So what is native stone? Well, in my opinion, petrified tree, petrified titan, and then there's probably some foundational elements, but I don't know exactly what came before the titans and the trees. Here's another quartz vein, and this is what, like, when they use different chemicals to extract the quartz from around the gold without harming the gold, then you can see the growth-like structure that the gold has. And I personally think that the gold was part of the nervous system of the tree and the titans as well. But it may be that it's just coming about as a result of a transmutation, or maybe it was already there and the trees are just creating it themselves. I don't know. That's gonna take someone else to solve that mystery. And Ben just sent me one. It says gold in petrified wood. Black petrified wood containing gold has been found near here. Cy Cox reported that many petrified logs have been ground into mortars and the gold extracted. Approximately 40 sacks of the ground wood would have yielded gold, he claimed. So thanks, Ben, for that. There it is. He just sent that to me. And hopefully he and I can do another live stream again sometime very soon. Been talking with Old World Florida as well about going on with him. So that'll be fun, because I'm sure we'll have lots of interesting things to talk about. And yeah, so let me just see if there's anything else to cover. I think that might be the largest nugget they've ever found, but there's different claims about the nuggets, and it's definitely beautiful to look at and fun to ponder. But to me, I see this now and I just see sap, 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 and this to me is got to be photoshopped. Never seen anything even remotely close to that size, but I wouldn't be surprised if it could exist. Yeah. So, and again, they're just looking for all these quartz layers and going through them. And this is what it looks like at a distance, and it can be going through just about any kind of rock. You're going to have lots of different varieties of tree that are going to petrify in different ways depending on their composition. And yeah, it's so I think it was all coming from the great trees. And this is another image from Mike from Hangman1128. If you haven't been to his channel, sub. But here he's showing the quartz runs through, and it goes in these lines because it's following the grain of the tree, because it's the sap of the tree. And I'm 100% certain that that is true. Hey, there he is, my corruptor in the house, Conspiracy Music Guru, welcome. I'm a little bit spacey today because of you. I blame you for that, you and your jungle juice, your cognac. So this is interesting here. You can see the rock, and then you've got, you have this layering of the quartz, like it's almost like sandwiched between. I think that's fascinating. That it almost ties in a bit to the research that I've been doing regarding titans, and this whole idea of bone and the construct of bone being limestone, and then the limestone channels are oftentimes filled with a quartz layer going through them, and that layer is then filled with iron ore or reddish dirt, which to me, when I see that, I'm looking at blood vessel, bone, all three together exactly as they should have been. So yeah, just lots of great examples, and let's move on now. So this is Dan Hurd. He's got a great channel, and he's this classic prospector guy that he's finding these amazing finds. This is him. This is what he looks like here.
Just be run a second time. I'm really lucky today. It's the perfect weather for doing this. The crusher makes a lot of dust that you don't.
So he's basically taking a bunch of what looks like sandstone.
The biggest gold.
I'm not sure what. And this has got a lot of iron ore in it, and so he's just showing the different techniques for how that's going to be extracted. And he hates wearing a mask, but he does it for his own safety purposes. This is called a sluice, I think. It's the whole process of gold extraction and refinement and everything is pretty complex. You know, some people just go panning for it, and then you got to separate it out, and you've got to melt it down. All right, here's another nugget from Ben. He's in the background. Thanks, Ben. Gold and petrified wood. In the gold mines of Victoria, fossil wood and even timber supports are often thoroughly permeated with particles of gold, which under the microscope are seen adhering in patches to crystals of iron pyrites all through the interior of the wood. A specimen of pyrites from the center of an old tree trunk is reported to have assayed 30 ounces of gold per ton. It's a lot of gold for something like that. Yeah, so Dan Hurd, let's see, that one. Losing track of where I am here. Yeah, so it's fun to, there's all this stuff I never took any interest in or knew anything about, and then they're going to melt it down and smelt it to extract it, and there's all these procedures. It's alchemy, modern alchemy. This is another guy, Ask Jeff Williams, and he goes through a lot of different processes of, he's using a potato here. This is apparently an old technique well, check this out. This is kind of cool, actually.
They're going to pay you 94 to 96% spot, depending on which one you use. Now, we like going through Midwest Refinery, and I'll leave a link down below. But it's always a good idea to keep it refined.
Oops, sorry if that was blowing your ears out.
Into small buttons. That way, if there's a financial crash, you can use it as currency. The first step to using this in a refining process is you have to get a layer of carbon on the outside of this. We're going to use MAP gas to do that. And to remove the impurities, we're going to be using borax.
So makes it charcoal, and then later he adds some of this stuff to it, and he starts using the potato. Sorry if that's blowing your ears out. He's using the potato to melt this stuff down, and then you can see the gold accumulating here on the outer edges as he burns away other stuff. So, and there's apparently a lot of things you have to know, because otherwise you can poison yourself with fumes, and I just love this. It's so like old school, they're using the tools they're using to do this is fun. He just looks like something from a Western movie, doesn't it? Doesn't he? I think that's the whole idea there. Partner, howdy, partner. I don't know what the heck that thing is, but looks like a little metal donkey or something. Yeah, so just more of the same. This is just looking at all the different ways in which they find high-grade gold and how it manifests. And, the best gold, as it says, right, high-grade ore, gold not bound to other elements except quartz, of course. Anyway, they say that gold is commonly found in quartz. Specimens from Fremont Grant in Mariposa County. So yeah, so trees make gold. That's my conclusion, unequivocally. And the bigger the tree, the more gold you get.
And that's as far as they went on it.
Yeah, so this is a guy, he goes into an old abandoned gold mine, and he's showing the different places. Like, this is the entrance. Goes deep in here, and you know, they were pulling a lot of stuff out of this.
That they left to hold up the mountain above their head.
Kind of important.
So the only thing holding the mountain up is those pillars behind me. So I got to go in here and do a little prospecting and not get squashed by the mountain.
Prospecting.
So
say that word.
It did behind me.
So yeah, he finds remains of some of these channels, and you can, yeah, here we go.
All through there.
Yeah, so that's still
so I'll load up.
Fairly rich in gold. You can see the color.
The chunks I broke off of here, and I think it's about time to call it a day. I've been picking.
Yeah, so I'll leave links to all these guys. This is MBM LLC, and if you're interested, you can check it out for yourself. This was an interesting thing, and I heard another bleep from. Ooh, all right. This one Ben says is his best one. I don't think I've seen this one yet, so I'll just read this one together with you guys. The origin of gold, a new theory. We find the following in the San Francisco Globe. A Mr. Mooney has been delivering lectures in Australia on the origin of gold, concerning which he pronounced the following novel theory. I set out by declaring my belief that gold is the petrified remains of matter that was once animate and accompanied, as it generally is, by ocean pebbles, quartz crystals, and other saline and marine debris. I am of opinion that gold is the petrified fat or marrow of a peculiar fish which once floated over the gold fields when those fields were beds and bottoms of the great ocean of the world. In proof of the hypothesis that gold is nothing more than petrified fat of a peculiar fish, the lecturer showed specimens of quartz in which marine shells were embedded. Mr. M also alluded to the fact that iron exists in the human blood and argued from that position that gold might be educed, that's a new word for me, from the marrow of fishes. So that's an interesting one coming from fishes. I've been theorizing that in my Unveiling a Titan series that that when Titan's petrified, please tell me I wasn't, oh my gosh, I haven't been showing any of that, have I? Oh yes, I have, good. Whew. I thought I made that rookie maneuver there. So that's going. You guys have been seeing everything up until just the last few seconds, I hope, right? Let me know. Hi, everybody. Check in with the chat a little bit here. Take a little brief pause before we continue. Hope you saw all that I was showing for the last half an hour since I looked at the chat. Let me know if everything's good. Yes, okay, good. Yeah, so where are we now here? Oh yeah, I just want to show this. This is another video from Dan Hurd. I rethink, Maria Ekman, Critical Truther. Welcome, some new names in here. Logan, Stan, Tom, hi Tom, Jules. Analog, is he in here? I haven't seen him. anyway, he's here on support, offering some great stuff. Good. I'm glad you saw it all. All right. So, yeah, this is a fun video. Why are there 96 million red gems on this beach? And Dan
sort of stays a little bit and lets a bit of the silt and mud
now
land
this
on top.
particular one isn't as interesting as the next one I'm going to show you, because he doesn't really show the surrounding terrain. But what he's looking at here, I think these are all garnets, and garnets are basically the same hardness as quartz. They're like 6.5 or 7 on the hardness scale. And so he's just going into a river and panning for them, and they're accumulating here. And yeah, it's a fun video to watch. Absolutely gorgeous. But if you look at where he's at, I would just say that this is Titan country, and that these mountains back here, very likely, if you got up close to them and looked at them, you'd find plenty of evidence that for the great trees. And so you've got granite here, and then anytime you see these stones that have all of this micro layering to it, I no longer believe that these are sedimentary layered rocks. I think that these are just petrified parts of Titanic trees. That's my take on it. So he's just grabbing all this stuff and he harvests it and he refines it and gets it down to the point where it's red, and then at the end he looks under the microscope. So I think this is just all petrified tree, and it's breaking down. Some of it breaks down to sandstone. Some of the petrified sap is breaking down to different gemstones, different minerals, and it sorts itself out by density and buoyancy. Funny how that works. So this is just looking at the Mohs hardness scale, diamond being the hardest at 10, and quartz is coming in at 7. And then if you go down here, you can see that granite, or not granite, but ruby is a 9, and then these different ones that Dan Hurd is showing, they're like 7, 6.5. So it's right in there with quartz, and so it makes sense that you're going to find all kinds of different densities of material depending on what it is. This is another great video where he's saying, why are there 96 million green gems on this beach? And it's interesting because they also layer themselves out. The heavier ones get thrown further up the beach, so he's able to pan for them and find much better quality up here than down here. But what most interested me was the background. Check this out. When I see this now, because this is in Hawaii, I think, and you're looking at volcanic lava, and if you look at the background there, check this out. Look at this micro layering. Now, how is that going to come about through volcanic activity? Right, you're going to get this micro layering of volcanic flow. It doesn't make any sense to me. And when you see it, it's definitely in Hawaii. Here's some better footage of it. He's showing how this is all embedded in this. So it makes sense that is the volcano creating these gems and spewing them out, or was this all molten and then it cooled? Or was this all tree? And you're gonna see here this incredibly complex layering. And then look at that. This is exactly the kind of stuff that that Hangman has been showing, but it's obviously of a different material. It's a different color. But I've been entertaining for several years now the idea that not all volcanoes, because some are mud volcanoes, some other volcanoes may be gigantic mining waste tips. I was toying with the idea that some volcanoes might even be titanic dung heaps, right? You get large amounts of feces, just like you get with compost piles. Compost piles generate all kinds of heat, and the larger the compost pile, the greater the chances that it can spontaneously combust. And when those things start to catch fire, they can't even put them out. They just have to wait for them to burn. So maybe that's what's happening down below, especially if you throw in a bit of radium and uranium and plutonium into the mix. You've got, you know, these more active volcanoes. And also lava tubes look exactly like tree root structures as well. So it's just like, why are there so many things that are dovetailing perfectly if there wasn't some kind of truth to all of these crazy harebrained ideas, you know? I think that they're not crazy harebrained ideas, but we've been taught to believe that because we're all paradigm blind, because that's what we were told, that this stuff isn't possible. Oh boy, here's another one from Ben. Petrified elephant. This is right up my alley. Here we go. Petrified elephant. Over the northwest of Strawberry Point near what is called Reed's Hollow, a number of farmers are excited over the find of a petrified elephant plainly seen since a late washout, the animal apparently having been buried years ago in the sand, which later turned to rock. Not much interest has been aroused in the vicinity where the elephant has been discovered, as Reed's Hollow has long been noted for its wonderful rocks, its deep gullies, and its gold deposits. A find like a petrified elephant simply arouses curiosity, Strawberry Point Press. It does indeed, especially when it's 753 meters tall. Yeah, so let's see. I'm getting near the end of this. I thought that was fun. I wanted to show that in a previous stream, and I never got around to it. Ben sent me this the other day. Incredible salt mines are like another world beneath our feet. I've already been toying for a long time with the idea that salt mines are also petrified tree. Now, how a tree petrifies to salt, I don't know. But when you see some of this footage, and these photos are black and white, again, I'll leave the links to this, but a lot of these places are absolutely mind-boggling and gorgeous, and I didn't even know they existed until quite recently. I theorized that Himalayan salt because I saw, you know, photographs of it in grain, and I'll show you some. Here we go. Here we go. Biogeology. Check this out. Salt mountains. Some of you have already seen these pictures, probably. Look at these things. So it's just like a layer, and then it did this for a long time, except for this, which it wasn't doing that. It was sort of doing this white stuff, but then, you know, and then we're going to do the dark again. Oh no, now we're going to do the light stuff. And then we're going to do the dark again. You know, this is what our mainstream narrative is that this all just gets laid down over millions of years of time, and you get this beautiful banding. It's like the Earth just keeps changing its mind about what to do, right? Or is this biological in origin? Is it possible that maybe this was part of a tree that grew, and maybe it's a certain species of tree that when it undergoes petrification, it becomes salt? But these salt locations are just astonishingly beautiful. And if you look at this, going back to the whole spelunking titans thing, and the root structures of the trees, and these, you know, isn't this looking like the exact same thing with the same banding and the same descent into, you know, the structure? I think so. And you know, what is it that's in Shakespeare? There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. I think we're just, you know, scratching the surface. This is all salt, apparently. Look at these big blocks of it. But, you know, it's always, when you see the salt mines, which I'm going to show you now, it's always got grains just like tree in here. Now, some might want to call this geopolymer. I don't think so. So those are black and white. Let me show you the really great photographs. So thanks to Ben for sending me this. It was already on my mind to cover this, and we've been syncing up left and right. And he'll do a live stream, and he'll cover something that I already had on my on the list to talk about. So search for salt mines, and you'll find, oh no, this is, I just bringing this back up to show again, this is from the Action Adventure Twins. This is hard stone, and this is that which I showed you a moment ago. And then this is looking inside the salt mines, and this is what you got here. Look at the grain here, and these lines are from the harvesting process. These aren't naturally occurring blocks, because if those were laid down as a geopolymer, why the heck would you get this complex tree ring-like grain? And so I think that this is part of the mining process that's creating these lines. And you can see what's happening up here. And in Poland, apparently, there's a famous mine that you can take tours of, which some of these pictures are from inside of there. These gigantic, ginormous caverns. Look at this. You got the straight lines, but look at these swirls. That's tree growth. That's rings. Those are tree rings. What else would it be? Let's look at that. This is this Polish underground salt mine, and you can go in, and they have like restaurants inside of them, and looks like a pretty awesome thing to do. If I'm ever in Poland, I'm going to make that a priority. Not so expensive, $54 to get in. Kind of expensive, but look at how gargantuan these are. And this is from the drilling process. You'll see, might even see the machine here in a moment. So like scooping in with these just big drill. Didn't even know this stuff existed until, in the last year. They've got one that's been converted into a theme park, and there's these boats, and you can go paddling around on the boats. It's wild. I'd pay 50 euros for that, or 50 bucks. And again, this is the drilling process. And this is that theme park from above. It looks pretty awesome. No shortage of salt there. So this is the marble caves. I think these might be in, I think it's in Argentina, if I remember correctly. And once again, you're seeing the same kinds of patterns here. And I think that, these tree structures, depending on what the conditions are going to petrify to salt, or petrify to sandstone, or petrify to granite, or petrify to marble. And if I showed in one of the last live streams, I got deep. Oh, it was the geopolymer video. I got deep into the whole sandstone layering and how that ties into sandstone dwellings, geopolymers, and places like Petra. And to me, it's just self-evident that those are tree. Oh boy. And Ben tells me there's a salt mine in Austria with railroads and canals that has been inhabited for over 1,000 years. That's nuts. That's so cool. So yeah, so this is these are these marble caves, and just more examples of the same. Now, is this morphogenic resonance? Is this the what is known as the doctrine of signatures, where things just look like things because that's the way the realm works, and that's the way nature is, and we've got the Fibonacci sequence and the golden mean and all these things, and so because of that, you're going to get this reoccurrence of patterns. You got monkeys, the animals, and then you've got orchids that look like monkeys, and yeah, that also happens. But using that as a way to just hand wave dismiss these findings and how they relate so perfectly in every single way with trees. And then, you'd have to also dismiss the evidence that Hangman has shown us. I mean, look here. Here, this looks like petrified wood. And you can see all of these rings. And it's like looking at Petra, but it's a different color. and it's a different material, but it's the same thing. Same, but different. And I think it all depends on the external conditions of, that cause these things to happen. And so here's one more from Ben, which I'll read. It's just sent me. Underground Village. Some of the wonders of the famous Krakow, Poland salt mine. It is in the remarkable salt mine of Poland, about 8 miles from Krakow. It is situated in the midst of a spacious plain, scooped out of one immense bed of solid salt. In various parts of this spacious plain stand the huts of the miners and families, some single and others in clusters like villages. They have very little communication with the world above ground, and many hundreds of people are born and live all of their lives there. A great number of horses are kept there, and when once let down, they never see daylight again. But some of the men take frequent occasions of going up and taking the fresh air. The horses usually grow blind after they have been some time in the mine, but they do as well for service afterwards as before. Among the 1,000 wonders of this subterranean paradise, the most surprising is that there runs through this place a constant stream of pure, fresh water, sufficient to supply the inhabitants and their houses. Christian at work. So the whole fresh water thing, Ben and the archivist, again, if you haven't subbed to his channel, what are you waiting for? The archivist in Old World, Florida, they've done a number of streams talking about the streams, the different underground waters. Florida's apparently got the highest concentration of mineral springs in the world with the highest quality waters. It's rich in radium and all kinds of other trace elements and minerals, and it's said to be the location of the Fountain of Youth. There's a couple of really great videos that Old World Florida has done on this recently, looking into this, and incredible footage, wonderful editing and narration from Narco Longo. I don't even know his real first name. Every time I see him, he's got a different name on his live stream, so I don't know what his name is. Anyway, that I'm just going to post here. This is the Twitter link, and I'll put this in the show notes as well to Ben's Twitter thread. He's got over 10,000 or approaching 10,000 different clippings on all of these subjects, which we're all touching on in a variety of different ways and directions. And it all seems to be overlapping and dovetailing perfectly. So that's pretty cool. So much of this stuff I knew nothing about until I just started looking at rocks with new eyes. And it's been like one giant rabbit hole that opens up deeper and deeper the further I go. So that's the presentation for today, but I'm happy to take some questions from the chat and see if there's any. And thank you all for being here. It's been fun once again. 167 people watching. Wonderful to have a crowd for this sort of thing. Just, you guys are the ones that make it all worthwhile. And I really value your time. It's fun to be on this exploration and to talk about all of this with you guys. And so yeah, speak now. If you have any questions, put them in all caps. And yeah, we'll do another stream sometime soon. Ben is so busy, and I'm having a hard time keeping up with his content. I don't know how he does it. He's got 3 kids and a full-time job. My kids are fully grown, and I, hardly see them. Thank you all. How much is an acre of land where you're at, Stellium? If you get away from the coast, land is really cheap here. But I haven't really looked into it that much. I happen to, unfortunately, live in one of the more expensive parts of Spain. It didn't start that way when I got here, but it's become more and more exclusive because it's like a little pearl. So I'm kicking myself that I didn't buy about 12 years ago when I first arrived. Much love from Padova. Wow, I went to school in Padova, Italy. Cool to see somebody here from there. It's a beautiful, gigantic star citadel, second oldest college in Europe, according to the mainstream narrative. Had Galileo was a professor there, and also Copernicus at one point, and I think a good portion of our heliocentric model came from that college. So it's a very interesting place. I'll do a stream on that, because I started a stream. I've done 2 videos called Star Forts I Have Known and Loved, Sfikal, the little tip of the hat to Pikal and Tikal, and I've done 2 episodes, one with Ben and 13th Monkey, and the other just with 13th Monkey, and I've got about 6 of those planned, and I've just not gotten back to it. A lot of food for thought. Thank you, Indiana Joe, for being here. What you said, but in all caps. Stand alone. Let me back up. Connor's dad. Oh. Alex Jones, Prison Planet, super heavy galactic stuff. Great tribute episode on YouTube. Okay. Maybe it was further up. Kan jag tala svenska? Klart kan jag tala svenska, men jag har en väldigt tjock amerikansk accent som kommer aldrig försvinna. Men jag gör mitt bästa för att prata. Men jag har bott i Spanien i 12 år nu. Så och jag pratar aldrig svenska med min familj. De tycker inte om det. De tycker jag låter väldigt konstig och vill inte att jag pratar. So de brukar make fun of me. They make fun of me when I speak Swedish, so I don't usually do it that much. But jag har svenska patienter ibland, och det är ett väldigt kort tillfälle för att öva. Men yeah, I do what I can. What are my thoughts on so-called extinct volcanoes? I touched on that a little bit earlier. I think maybe not all of them, but I think some of them were formerly the Titanic trees that got hit by some kind of a great force, and that the ones that are active are still smoldering down there, just like a compost pile can burn for a very, very long time. So I think that's what's happening. And then when you add radioactive materials like radium, plutonium, and uranium, maybe they can burn forever. And some volcanoes may be mining waste. Some I've seen some interesting stuff on, mining tips, and that those can also spontaneously combust. So imagine that on a much larger scale, because we had much larger beings, much larger construction, which means that the spoil tips, for mining would have been much larger as well. Grand Rising from Poland. Poland, wow. We were talking about Poland earlier with the salt mines. Someday I hope to see those. Thanks, Robert, for the donation. I appreciate it. Recoup a little bit of the costs and time. Sorry, the chat's going fast, and then I scroll and it jumps, and I'm not sure where I was, and then I go back, so I'm a little slow on this. Oh, were you impressed, Maria? Tack så mycket. Det var snällt för dig. Yeah, in Spanish as well. I used to be fluent in Italian, but the Spanish ruined my Italian because they're too close together. So I try and say some Italian, and every other word comes out Spanish, and I get stuck, and I'm like, It would probably go better if I had some alcohol in me. Then I would stop caring about the mistakes and I would just kind of fall into a groove. Ja, jag talar svenska. Jag förstår the Danish a little bit. Nova Scotia, beautiful part of the world. Reminds me a lot from what I've seen of the Stockholm, the Swedish archipelago, and it's amazing. Thanks, Robert, for your appreciation. I appreciate your appreciation. Petrified coal mine fires, yeah, and coal I show in the video that's on the screen right now. The great trees were real. Here's proof. I show that coal, or evidence for the idea that coal comes from the great trees, and you know, these large coal seams, and that when coal vitrifies, it turns to obsidian. There's guys in that video that I show are making coal from wood in a short amount of time. I show a bunch of scientific articles where they're actually doing coalification, in some cases in hours. Yeah. Cool. So how long have I been going now? When did I start? Oh, I started at 9, so a couple hours. That's a good amount of time. I hope it's been interesting for everybody. You enjoyed the stream. Again, thank you for the support and being here. Really appreciate the comments, especially. I love the comments in the videos. You know, YouTube turned down the nozzle. Like, I used to get a big spike, and then that would taper off for a day or two, and then I'd get another spike on the second day. It spikes now, drops like that, and then it's a trickle afterwards. So despite having more subs than I've ever had, more people watching live, you know, we're being ghoul rhythmed. Bunch of ghouls, you know, and their rhythms. So thank you for the comments, and they help the algorithms as well. So the more comments, the more chat, the better. Yeah. I'm sure I've forgotten some things I wanted to talk about, but have to take care of it next time. Got a couple of interviews coming up, and I'll put some stuff up on the channel very soon. So thanks everyone for being here. Critical Truther, thank you to the mods for helping out and keeping it civil and friendly and fun, and the vibe is always pretty good anyway. So I'm feel lucky and blessed to have such a wonderful group of people interested in what I'm doing. So till next time, thank you everybody. It's already full summer here. I'm just sitting here doing nothing, and I'm sweating. Humidity went through the roof yesterday. It was just perfect temperature, and today is already like whew. So summer has begun in Spain, yeah, I'm surprised I'm not glistening more than I am with my usual halo above. Pedagogic, I'll take that as a compliment. Try and keep it structured, try and not be too repetitive, even though repetition is the mother of knowledge, and that's how we really learn things. So there's something to be said for doing things over and over again, but I just don't like to be repetitive for repetition's sake, or to you know, try and get lots of views or something. So definitely a lot of great older content to look through if you're new to the channel and haven't seen the earlier videos. I recommend going back to those. It's this little tiny dot right there, it's very awkward. I should put an eye over it, then it would be more natural for me to stare there. But have a good night, everybody. Good day, good morning, wherever you are, whatever, or grand rising rather than morning. Sounds so depressing, doesn't it? Morning, grand rising. I like that one. That's one I've been using lately. Take care.